been so nervous about doing something. I'd much sooner do it live to you personally. Doing it on Zoom is freaking me out a little bit. However, I have on my wall this board. I've written on it, it was given to me by the Romanian teenagers on my birthday, and it said, "I can do all things through God and a strong cup of coffee." Now, I know there's been a lot of prayer, and here we go. My dad, I pulled up at a filling station at one time, and there was a Pierce's builder's van, doing the filling up beside me, and a young chap got out, and we just got talking, and I said, "Well, my dad worked for Pierce's for many years," and he said, "Who was your dad?" And I said, "Ron Ogborn." "Oh, Ron," he said, "I was his apprentice. He was such a kind man." And I was just so filled with love for my dad with that comment. And my second thoughts were, I hope I can leave a legacy like that. In other words, I want to live in his image. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning, is living in God's image. And we're going to look at what sin has done to break it. And we're talking about the functioning in the spiritual area of our lives. So I'm going to try and go over to the screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. They'll let me do it, right, George?
That should work now.
Okay, it should be all right then. Okay. No. No. Okay, lovely. We're away. Okay, so we're talking about reflecting God's image. Our first one I've called "What Sin Has Done," because we've broken a link with God, and we need to repair that link. And to do so, we need to understand ourselves and understand what drives us and where we fall short and what we can do to restore that image. And so we're going to talk about functioning in the spiritual area of our lives. And so let's start from the beginning and read from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 and 28. God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on earth." And then in Psalm 8 and verse 4 to 9 it says, "What is man that you are mindful of him, and the sons of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him dominion over the works of your hands. You put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea that pass through the paths of the sea. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth." So that makes it clear that we were created in God's image. What's he like? Well, Jesus came that we could see him in human form. So God is like Jesus, Jesus like God. And what's Jesus like? Is Jesus like me? And this is the big question. Are we actually reflecting that image? Can Jesus be seen in me? And so we need to discover how we're made and what we are with God, that we feel comfortable with ourselves. Someone said the world would be a better place if it was not for people. They didn't know God. His purpose for man was relationship with him. God created him in his own image, that he'd be in a relationship with him, have dominion over the earth. To achieve this, man is a threefold being. And so we're in three parts. We are, first, we have a spirit. That's in spirit enables us to have a relationship and to identify with God. It enables us to have a relationship with God which is different to animals. To have a relationship with the world. We have dominion. We're foundational. The earth was put into our hands. And so we've got dominion, sharing the dominion of God over the world. Secondly, we've got a soul. And that soul is broken down into three parts. We have the rational part, which is our ability to think. We have the volitional, which is the opportunity to choose. And thirdly, we've got the emotions, our reactions to those decisions that we make. And so we've got that ability to think and to work things out for ourselves, if you like. And then thirdly, we have a body which is the suitcase for all the rest of the things that God has given us. And so that puts a picture with us. And it was a misuse of these gifts that helped us to break that relationship with God. Oops, not one. So before sin, we had God at the top, we had Adam, we had Eve, and there was a clear flow between them. Communication in all directions. And the problem is when sin came, that relationship was broken. The communication broke down. And so we went into wrong thinking because our spirit was not in line with God anymore. And so what happens then is there are two ways of thinking. We have the right way is where the spirit leads, and when we're in the right spirit, then our soul, our thinking, our choosing, our emotions are right, and then the body follows. But when we're not in the spirit, then the body leads. An example for that, I'm fortunate. I don't have trouble if I want to lose weight. I just have to stay off the sweets and the biscuits and the cakes. And when I'm in that mood, Jenny can bake a really nice cake, and I can see the cake on the table, and I can appreciate it and say, that's a lovely cake, and walk on by. Because I'm in the right spirit, and everything's okay. It's not a problem. However, after that period of time, I love sweet things. And if I'm not dieting, if I'm not swimming, then I see the cake, and my body, the juices start to rise, and I look at the cake and think, how can I get a slice of that cake without her noticing? And the technique, chaps, is to take the slice and then just move everything round it away. You see, my body is taking charge of my thinking, it's taking choice, taking control over my choices. And the spirit kind of drops away at the bottom. And so we have to get our thinking in the right direction, led by the spirit rather than the body. In life we have needs. And these needs need to be, sorry, I'm going back a little bit. We have needs, but what happens? Let's read again from Genesis 3:1-7. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. He said to the woman, "Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of this fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." And the serpent said to the woman, "You will surely die, for God knows that the day that you eat, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to her eyes, the tree desirable to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate it. She also gave to her husband who was with her, and he ate. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings. You see, by turning from God, by wanting the desire of their physical beings to eat the fruit, then the spirit dropped away. And that relationship was broken. And so, by turning to God, there's been a reduction in our view of humanness. We evaluate humans lower. We see them as naked apes, and we see them a little higher than animals rather than a little lower than God. And so sin really is when we can't look God in the eye. If we're to understand ourselves and others, we need to understand what sin is and the effect that it has on our relationship with God and our consequential behavior. We've all got needs, and God is the only non-dependent. And when there are unsatisfied needs in our spirit, we've got severe problems. So let's look at those needs. There are casual needs, ones that we can live without. The kind of the basic needs. You know, I don't want it to rain today. I wish I could have some chocolate. You know, these are needs which, you know, if they're not met, it doesn't really matter. Although for some, the lack of chocolate might. But, you know, these are very casual needs. But then we have critical needs. And those are needs that are difficult to live without. We have food, sleep, money, health. Without any of those, then we are in some form of difficulty. But the important ones are the crucial needs. And these we can't live without. They're our security, our self-worth, and our significance. These are real needs in our life. And that's the variation in intensity between casual and crucial. We can't live without feelings of security, self-worth, and significance. If we lack any of those, then we react to them. We go searching for them. And so we have a problem if they're not satisfied. It affects our personality, it affects our behavior, it affects our choices. And so when we look at them, again, if we look at these deep longings and thirsts, if we go for a man, we need security, we need self-worth, and we need significance. With God, then security. We've got safe, unconditional love. Whatever we do, God loves us. He demonstrated that for us on the cross. And by the same token, our self-worth, we are of value with God. And thirdly, our significance. We've got importance and meaning. All these things we have, it's a safe cone that we're in, a safe world that we're in with God. And we get these things sorted for us. But without God, then we're looking at something very different. Security becomes insecurity. Self-worth becomes inferiority. Significance becomes insignificant. And these things are so important to recognize because they affect our very behavior. When God created Eve, their corporate identity and relationship was in God. They were dependent things, and their security, all self-worth and significance was in Him. And when Adam and Eve misused this, and misused the freedom that God had given them by being tempted by Satan, spiritual link was broken. With the image of God now distorted, they looked elsewhere for their needs to be satisfied. And the longing to satisfy our needs is so powerful that people tackle the problems in different ways. We deny their existence and try to hide them. Oh, I'm okay. We try to do it by achievement. We perhaps become very ambitious in our employment. We even could become ambitious within the church. Not necessarily to forward the work of God, but to put ourselves on a pedestal. We can attempt to have them met in another human being, linking up to somebody successful. Say, look, this is my friend, so I'm important. It's so easy to do. And then we can try to reduce them to manageable proportions, which is not, a great thing to do, because again, it's a kind of denial. And so we can also depend on the Lord to meet them. If we go back to our previous slide, all those things, all these feelings that we have within us can be satisfied through God and through our relationship with Him. And so these are the things that we need. And most methods are controlled by demanding or manipulation, often becoming dependent on others in order to meet the needs that only God can really satisfy. And that therefore becomes idolatry because it's putting man before God. And today, by maintaining our independence from God, we can find our greatest difficulty in these three key areas. We've all got longings. The sad fact is that these become our goal. And in our behavior, we order our lives and the lives of those around us, often by manipulation, just in an attempt to meet these goals. God is the only one that we can depend on fully to meet these needs. And the failure to recognize these needs will create a spiritual and psychological problem because they're desperate. And only by returning to the original place of dependence on God will we find our true identity in Him and fully function in the spiritual area of our lives. And so in this slide we've got the pink section that it shows that how much we depend on God. And we need to push that pink section out towards the green ring so that that becomes a solid, that our dependency on God is total. And that's the aim, and that's what we want to do as we go through this series, as we look at our bodies, as we look at our soul, then we can move into these things. We can gradually build up that inner circle until it reaches the outer one. There's three vital principles. Everyone longs for something. Everyone is controlled by what they long for. And any crucial longing which is not satisfied by Jesus Christ will lead to spiritual and psychological problems. And these are the things that we want to work on as we go through these sessions. Build up that the longings and parts of us that we are dependent on God, and gradually, by looking after the way that we behave, we will then reflect the image of God. And so in our future studies, we'll highlight the paths we take to meet these goals, both through wise and foolish thinking, the result of our broken relationship with God. We can then take steps to restore that relationship. And so next time we're going to talk in session 2 about the body, and then we'll move on to the rational side, the way that we think, the volitional, which is a posh word for choices, and the emotional. And that's a very important one, because we all struggle with emotions at times. And there are lots of reassurances there. Is it okay to be angry? Things like that often come into our mind. And so as we go on through this series, then we will gradually build up on these things and answer some of the questions. But the important thing about today's session is that the aim is to restore that relationship with God, get that spirit right, that God is flowing down through us, that the Spirit of God is controlling our thoughts, our choices, our emotions, and our body will follow. We'll do the right thing. Get it the wrong way round, and the Spirit goes out the window. And so we will build on what I've said this morning, and hopefully be able to work our way and bring that circle out wider until we are in line with God. And so we're going to go back now to the group session. If you can take us back, George.